You've been told your whole life that the goal is to go to heaven when you die. It's on the sympathy cards, it's in the hymns, it's the last thing said at every graveside in Christendom. It shapes the way you sing, the way you grieve, the way you think about what makes any of this worth it. And almost none of it comes from the Bible. The Bible doesn't say what you think it says about heaven. And the Greek word that gets translated as heaven, uranos, is part of why you've been reading a translation of something far more disruptive than going up. Here's the thing nobody says out loud in most churches. The Bible's ultimate promise is not that you go somewhere, it's that something comes here.
Stand at any graveside anywhere in the Western world and listen to the words spoken over the casket. He's gone to a better place. She's up there watching over us. They've gone home to heaven. The imagery is always vertical, always upward, always departure. You move toward God, God stays put. The soul sheds its body like a coat and floats free toward some luminous elsewhere. This is the story most Christians have absorbed without ever seriously asking where it came from. And when you go back to the Greek, when you locate the actual word the New Testament deploys 284 times, you find that the dominant direction of movement in the text is almost always the opposite of what the funeral cards suggest. The word is ouranos. It appears 284 times in the Greek New Testament, more than almost any other major theological term. And it carries a range of meanings that modern English collapses into one tidy, unexamined image. In its most basic sense, Ouranos is simply the sky, the vault overhead, the visible dome of air and cloud and stars arching above the earth. Strong's Concordance G3772 gives the full lexical range. The sky, by extension, heaven as the abode of God, by implication, happiness, power, eternity. Thayer's Greek lexicon traces the word to a root meaning to cover or encompass, the great arching canopy over everything beneath it. The same Greek word covers the atmosphere where storms gather, the sidereal expanse of stars, and the invisible dimension where God's sovereignty operates. 3 layers, 1 word. This is not a small distinction. When modern English speakers hear the word heaven, they hear one place, the destination of the righteous, the address of God, where saved souls spend eternity. When a first-century Greek reader encountered Ouranos, they encountered a layered, multidimensional concept, the sky you can see, the cosmos beyond it, the realm of divine authority within that cosmos. The word was not primarily about destination, it was about dimension, and in the New Testament, that dimension keeps tearing open and moving in the direction you do not expect. Notice what happens at the Jordan River. Matthew 3:16. Jesus comes up out of the water after his baptism. In the uranoi, the heavens are split open. The Spirit descends like a dove. The Greek verb for split open here is anoigo, to open, to unseal, to break apart. The heavens do not receive a soul going upward. They rupture downward. Something comes through the tear, and what comes through is not a human being ascending. It is a divine presence descending. The first dramatic use of Ouranos in Matthew's Gospel is a tearing, and what passes through the tear moves toward earth. This is the motion embedded in the word from the very beginning of Jesus' story, and it runs like a current through everything that comes after. I want you to stand on a hillside outside Jerusalem, about 18 months into Jesus' public ministry. It is sometime in the late afternoon. The air smells of dust and thyme. A crowd is gathered, not in a synagogue, not in a lecture hall, but in the open air. And the man speaking says words that crowd would have recognized immediately as a prayer. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. He is not teaching them to pray for exit. He is teaching them to pray for arrival. He is teaching them to hold the whole material, earthy, broken world in their hands and ask for the ouranos, the dimension of God's rule, to come into it. Matthew 6:10, your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. The Greek is genetheto to thelema su hos, en urano kai epiges. As in heaven, hos en urano, so also on earth, kai epiges. The directionality is unmistakable. Heaven is the template. Earth is the target. The prayer is not, take me there. The prayer is, bring it here. Jesus does not teach his disciples to pray for departure. He teaches them to pray for the character, the order, the justice of the ouranos to reshape the gay. This is the structural center of the Lord's Prayer. 2,000 years of Christians have spoken it every week. Most of them have not paused to notice that it points in the opposite direction from the sympathy card. Let's step back to the phrase that opens Jesus' entire public ministry. Matthew 3:2, John the Baptist's first proclamation. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The phrase is, He basileia ton ouranon, the kingdom of the heavens. Matthew uses this phrase 32 times. Mark and Luke both use kingdom of God in the exact same sayings. Matthew's substitution of ouranon for God is a Jewish scribal convention, a reverent circumlocution, a way of naming the divine without speaking the name directly. So the kingdom of heaven is not a geographic description of a place you travel to. It is a way of saying the sovereign reign of the God who dwells in the Ouranos. And the word for at hand, engiken, from engizo, means to draw near, to approach, to come close. Not you will eventually arrive there after death, but it is coming toward you right now, pressing into this moment, arriving at the edge of the present.
The kingdom of heaven is at hand is not an invitation to die well and ascend. It is a declaration that the domain of God's authority has crossed a threshold and is active in this world. Something is arriving. The Ouranos is not the door you go through at the end of your life. It is the source of something already coming toward you. In Matthew 5, the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus uses Ouranos 8 times in a single sermon. Every use is instructive. Matthew 5:3, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Present tense, is theirs, not will be theirs after death. Matthew 5:16, Let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. The purpose of your good works is not to earn your way to the Ouranos. It is so that people looking at you will give glory to the Father whose address is in heaven. The Ouranos is the location of the Father whose character is meant to be visible through you, here, on earth, now. Matthew 5:45, So that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. The Father, in the Ouranos, sends sun and rain, physical, material realities, to the physical, material earth without discrimination. The picture Jesus paints is not of a God who is waiting for you to ascend to him. It is a God who has been sending things toward earth since the beginning and has not stopped. Now go to the end. Go to the last great image the entire biblical narrative produces. Revelation 21, verse 1. John writes, Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. The Greek word for new is kainos, not neos, which means brand new, never before existing, out of nothing. Kainos means new in kind and quality, renewed, transformed. The same creation, with what was broken made whole, with what was corrupted set free. Verse 2, And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. The Greek verb is katabaino, to come down, to descend. From kata, meaning down, toward, and baino, meaning to walk or go. This is an unambiguous verb of descent. The holy city moves, it descends. It comes from God out of the Ouranos down toward the renewed earth. The direction of the final chapter of Scripture is the opposite of the sympathy card. 3 verses later, Revelation 21:3, a loud voice from the throne. Behold, the dwelling place of God is with humans. He will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. The Greek word translated dwelling place is skine, tent, tabernacle. The word John uses in his Gospel's prologue when he writes that the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, eskenosen, pitched his tent among us, tabernacled. The tabernacle in the wilderness was the intersection of heaven and earth, the space where the Ouranos met the Gay. Now, in John's vision, that intersection is no longer one tent in a desert. It is the whole renewed creation. God's address in the final chapter of the whole story is here. Notice what has just happened to the architecture of the entire biblical story. In Genesis, the garden is the place where God walks with humans in the cool of the evening, heaven and earth in seamless contact. The rupture of Genesis 3 is not just a moral failure, it is a dimensional fracture. Heaven and earth are separated. The whole biblical narrative from Genesis 4 to Revelation 20 is the history of that separation and the plan to repair it. The tabernacle is a temporary repair, a tent where the two dimensions touch. The temple is a permanent structure for the same function. The curtain is the membrane between them. When that curtain tears at the crucifixion, Matthew 27:51, the Greek is schizo, to split apart. The same family as the word used at the baptism.
It does not get repaired. And when Revelation 21 arrives, the temple itself is gone. Revelation 21:22. John sees no temple in the city because the whole city has become the Holy of Holies.
The two dimensions have finally merged. The Ouranos and the ge are one new thing. Now, let's put the honest card on the table, because this channel does not trade one oversimplification for another. The New Testament does speak of an intermediate state, a period between a believer's death and the final resurrection. And this intermediate state involves genuine presence with Christ, described by Paul in terms that are warm and real. Philippians 1:23, Paul, writing under threat of execution, says his desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better. The Greek is polo gar malon kreson, by much, by far, much more better. Something genuine and good awaits between death and resurrection. 2 Corinthians 5:8, Paul says he would prefer to be away from the body and at home with the Lord. The Greek for at home with the Lord is endemesai pros ton kyrion, to be present with, to inhabit the same space as, to dwell alongside the Lord. These passages are in the text, they are Greek, they describe something real. N.T. Wright, Bishop of Durham, one of the most careful New Testament scholars of the past 50 years, does not deny this intermediate state. What Wright insists on, from decades of Greek scholarship, is that this intermediate state is not the endpoint. It is, in his own words, the first and far less important stage of a two-stage process. The terminus is not the intermediate rest. The terminus is the resurrection, and then the renewed creation, and then the descent of the New Jerusalem, and then the full merger of Ouranos and ge that Revelation 21 describes. The problem is that popular Christianity collapsed the two stages. The waiting room got mistaken for the destination, and that mistake has a specific historical source. By the 3rd century, as Christianity expanded rapidly through the Greco-Roman world, the gospel met a philosophical culture thoroughly shaped by Plato. Plato's Phaedo, written in the 4th century BCE, describes the soul as a divine, immortal substance, temporarily imprisoned in a material body. Death is liberation. The soul finally sheds the drag of matter and ascends to the pure realm of eternal forms. This is a coherent and beautiful story, and it has almost nothing to do with the Hebrew worldview that produced the New Testament. For 1st century Jews, the body was not a prison. It was the person. Resurrection, anastasis in Greek, meant the body coming back to life, glorified and transformed but still embodied. This is what Paul argues at length in 1 Corinthians 15. A natural body is raised as a spiritual body, not a non-body, but a different kind of body, fitted for the new creation. 1st century Jewish Christians expected resurrection. They expected the renewal of the whole creation. They expected the kind of ending Revelation 21 describes. But as the faith spread into Platonic soil, the two stories merged. The ascending soul and the descending city blurred together, and over centuries, the Platonic version dominated popular imagination. The hymns of the 19th century cemented it, and most of what gets said at Christian funerals today is, at its eschatological core, more Platonic than biblical. You're reading a translation of a translation, and somewhere in that translation, the city stopped moving downward, and the souls started moving upward, and nobody noticed the switch. Paul in Romans 8 describes the whole creation, the Greek is ktisis, all created things, as groaning together in labor pains, waiting eagerly for the revelation of the sons of God. The Greek for groaning is systenazo, a collective sound under shared weight, and the metaphor Paul reaches for is childbirth, not death and escape, labor, the pain of something new coming through. Creation is not waiting to be discarded, it is waiting to be delivered. The Greek word Paul uses for the creation's posture, apokaradokia, eager expectation, comes from a root that means to crane the neck, to strain forward looking for something approaching. The creation is not looking up, it is looking forward, at the horizon, for what is coming. And what is coming is the redemption of the body, apolutrosis, the buying back of something enslaved so it can be returned to its rightful owner and rightful use. Not abandoned, restored, bought back. Acts 3:21. Peter, preaching in the temple courts shortly after Pentecost, says of Jesus, "Heaven must receive him until the time for restoring all the things about which God spoke by the mouth of his holy prophets." The Greek word is apokatastasis, to restore to an original condition, to bring something back to where it was meant to be. Used in Greek medical literature for resetting dislocated bones. Used legally for restoring exiles to their homeland. The Ouranos receives Jesus temporarily until this restoration happens. Heaven is not the permanent address for the redeemed. It is the location of the returning king, who is coming back to restore all things. All things, Panta, not all souls, all things. In Revelation 22, the very last chapter of the Bible, the risen Christ speaks 3 times with
the same Greek verb, erchomai. I am coming. Not I am waiting, not ascend to me, coming. A present tense active verb, ongoing action already in motion. And the final prayer of the entire canon is Maranatha, Aramaic for come, Lord. The last sound of the Bible is a greeting to someone arriving. The final word of the New Testament is not an invitation to ascend. It is the cry of a people at the door, watching the horizon for what is already on the way. Let's read John 14:2-3 one more time, because almost every Christian funeral uses it and almost no one reads it carefully.
Jesus, the night before his arrest. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. The word translated rooms is monai, from meno, to abide, to remain, to dwell. Way stations in a large household. And then the critical move in verse 3, I will come again. The Greek is erchomai, to come, to arrive. Jesus does not say, you will ascend to where I am. He says, I will come. The movement of the ultimate reunion is his. The direction of the final return is toward you, not away from you. This passage is answering the question the disciples are actually asking, which is, what does your departure mean? And the answer is, it is temporary, it is purposeful, and it ends not in your ascent, but in his arrival. So where does all of this leave you, not as a theological argument, but as a person? If you have lost someone, if you have said they're in a better place, and felt both the truth and the inadequacy of those words, the Greek is not taking the comfort from you. It is expanding it. The person you lost is with Christ. That is real and grounded in the text. The rest is genuine. The presence is genuine. But the rest is not the end. The end is resurrection. The end is a body made right in a world made whole, under a sky that has finally, fully, merged with the dimension of God. That is a larger comfort than the sympathy card, not a smaller one. And if you are alive, if you woke up this morning in a body that aches, in a world that bewilders you, in a life that is unfinished, the Greek has something for that too. You are not a soul squatting temporarily in matter, killing time until departure. You are a person in a body, in a creation that God is bent on restoring. Paul ends his entire argument about the resurrection in 1 Corinthians 15 with this: Therefore, my beloved brothers and sisters, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. The Greek is oukenos, not empty, not hollow, not without result. Because the work you do is not rearranging furniture in a building scheduled for demolition. It is participating in the restoration of a creation that is, through the resurrection of Jesus, already being remade. What changes for you today if the ultimate direction is down instead of up? If you are not a soul passing through on the way out, but a person participating in something arriving? What does it change about how you inhabit your body, your relationships, your work, the ordinary and broken world in front of you right now? Tell me in the comments. I'm genuinely asking, not filling space. Subscribe from, not to collect channels, but because the next word in this series will rearrange how you read the entire Old Testament. The Hebrew word is nephesh. It's translated soul in almost every English Bible. It does not mean what you think it means, not even close. The Bible ends not with souls ascending, it ends with a city descending. The last move in the whole story belongs to God, and the direction is down.